What's up, everybody? Welcome to Send It, the official blockchain and cryptocurrency podcast by OKX Insights. I'm your host, Adam James. I'm a senior editor here at OKX Insights, and I'm joined, as always, by my fellow senior editor, Hunain Naseer, the Nostradamus of the cryptocurrency markets. Hunain, how are you today?
I am good, Adam. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Good. And I'm also joined, as always, by the senior copy editor, the one who makes sure no typos, no errors, nothing, and I mean nothing, gets through. Maxwell Koopsen. Max, how are you today?
Yeah, it's never happened. It's never happened. I'm
Literally
good.
never. I dare anyone to find a mistake in any of our articles.
Now hold up. There are articles that have gone out while I've been on vacation or before I was hired. I don't want to open up the whole thing.
Well, I still dare anyone to find a mistake, and if they find one, you can rest assured that it didn't go through Max. He was on
And it will be
vacation.
fixed promptly.
And it will be fixed. And you will receive no credit for pointing it out.
I'll deny it. It never happened even.
So, without further ado, I'm just going to send it right over Hunain for a market update. Hunain, what's going on today? Oh, and by the way, before we do, for those watching or listening at home, this is recorded approximately 2 days before you're hearing this, or before it goes live at least. So keep that in mind. Hunain, what's up, man?
Yeah. So before coming to today, I'll just say the last few weeks have been really interesting. We've seen Bitcoin post a new high around 67,000, basically 66,999 on OKX, to be specific. And Ethereum has also been looking really strong on the ETH BTC pair. And unfortunately, just yesterday we could see altcoins were kind of starting to move, and there were kind of gains across the market, but that kind of had a setback today when Bitcoin fell from around 62,500 to 58,000 today. It tested that figure, and the drop is kind of I think 13% from the all-time high. It's not particularly bad, but I would say it is bad timing, because just like I said, just yesterday everybody was kind of like hoping to see all coins start posting those big gains, and then we can all talk about the genius season is in, and everything is going to go up. You can pick anything you want. That's kind of been stalled for now, in my view. I wouldn't say that's over. I would say it's stalled. This test of $58,000, I don't think it didn't come as a surprise. It is bad timing, but it's not a surprise. And I'll share a screenshot. You'll see the overlay later on. In that the $58,000 level kind of coincides with a very long-term trend line that starts from October 2020, and so it's kind of like a healthy test. I believe it had to happen for us to kind of see further growth. Talking about leverage, for example, I would say the leverage was high. I mean, funding rates were high, but they weren't exceptionally high. So this move is not like, I wouldn't say this move is a major flush. I would say it's kind of like a small correction before we can go up higher. On from a technical perspective, I would say we have to kind of watch this $58,000 level. If this holds for a few days, we could see kind of gradual growth from here. But on the downside, if this breaks, then there are two major zones. I would say 53,000 USDT is the first spot where I would look for something to go along with. But the major support zone is between 48 and 50,000. If it falls to 48-ish, I would say, it's not financial advice, but I would say that's where I would probably go with a bigger position, with more conviction, I'd say. Because I don't think that this bullish trend is over. This is a healthy correction. I think it's still within the bounds of a bullish trend. And that doesn't really change unless we lose, I would say, $46,000. Doesn't change that. So that's that for now. Altcoins have been stalled, like I said, but meme coins have been doing really well of late. Actually, not even meme coins, just these dog coins, and Sheeb. To be specific, I think Sheeb in this month to date has done nearly 700%. It's kind of defied expectations in that regard, and I think it's good for anybody who's made money or who has realized those gains. And for those who have not realized them yet, I think they should realize the importance of realizing these gains. Um, and I guess I'd love to hear what Adam and Max will think about this sheep performance and how things are going right now.
Yeah, I mean, before I get into the dog coins, yeah, with Bitcoin, makes me think about last week when we had, or not last week, but 2 weeks ago when we had Phil on, and he was talking about the potential of a double bubble. And Phil recorded with us basically right before the ETFs went live, and I think everything he said sort of came true. Um, and now, I mean, I do feel a certain sense of worry about the potential double bubble situation because I don't like that we broke the previous all time high and then pretty much immediately went right back below it. And unless we find, I think, buyers of support sort of here, like right now, then I'm more worried that we might fall back down to, for example, like the 20-week moving average. Because I mean, if you look at the weekly chart, for example, going back to July, when we were down, we were repeatedly testing $30,000. I mean, we've gone on a nice rally since that point up to a new all time high, and I think pulling back, if we wanted to test the 20-week exponential moving average, that would coincide around, I think, with the sort of $50,000 level that you mentioned, Hunain, and that would be, I think it would still be healthy. I wouldn't be like, oh, it's bear market or anything like that, but it wouldn't feel very good. It would definitely would sting because it's a pretty significant drop, and it could also happen very fast. And I think that would just not feel very good for most people. Um, and but I would still be worried even if we find support around the $50,000 range, I would still be worried that we wouldn't get right back up to the all time high again. And I think, maybe we could have a long period of like consolidation. Um, or worse yet, we could just start to kind of trend down where every rally gets sold and we start to put in lower highs below the all time high. And, and it's kind of like a best case scenario, things might become kind of boring after a period of sort of volatility, or worst case scenario, we sort of move down. And adding to that fear, I still have, I guess, like post traumatic stress from the Bitcoin CME futures going live at the basically the last all time high in 2017, December 2017. And it reminds me that anytime, so someone I know in my personal life who used to trade the traditional market used to say, like, quote, they always short it. So anytime you get like a new kind of financial product or a new big event on the market, more times than not, they like to short it. And I think the Bitcoin CME futures in 2017 was the perfect example of that. And I do have a bit of fear that now that the long awaited Bitcoin futures ETFs have gone live, that we could see this become a sell the news event after the initial excitement of it pushed us to a new all time high, and then we just get sent right back down. Um, I'm not saying this is going to happen, of course, but it's where my mind is at and what I worry about. And then on top of that, making me even more fearful is the dog themed meme coins, which anyone who follows me on Twitter will know sort of how I feel about this stuff. But um, I I get really worried when the whole market is pulling back except for the dog themed meme coins, which one might argue are the lowest value, sort of fundamentally, coins in the market. Well, those have been outperforming and are still outperforming even on a down day. And I'm a firm believer that the vast majority of people that are participating, that are buying this, are people that have very low, let's say, cryptocurrency literacy or blockchain literacy or experience in these markets or anything like that. I think a lot of people don't understand what these are, how they work. They just see an opportunity to make a lot of money quickly. And I know this, again, just using anecdotes from my personal life. I've had friends who haven't spoken to me in years from back home. I'm an expat, so I don't see a lot of these people very often, DMing me, asking me about Sheeb and about these meme coins, and if I think they can reach a penny and all of this stuff. And these people I know have no experience in the cryptocurrency market, don't understand it, cannot even tell you how Bitcoin works, for example. So all of these things are a bit worrisome to me. Not enough necessarily to make me be like, I'm shorting all markets and cashing out or something like that. But I, looking into the near term, I'm expecting to see my spot portfolio take losses. Um, I very rarely like sell spot Bitcoin for cash or something like that. Um, so with that in mind, I'm expecting to see like my portfolio kind of decrease in the near term.
By the way, I just got a push notification from CNBC uh, that it just said, remember Dogecoin? There's a new rival token just hit a record high and is close to overtaking it. So, yeah, CNBC now
Expect
is.
more pumping now.
Mm,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one more thing I'll add to this though, and it's curious. I would say that retail is not in all in right now in the market. I mean, I believe that a lot of the people right now in the market are still people who've been here for a while, who've kind of seen the cycle in 2017, 2018. I don't think a lot of new people are in just yet. And we kind of gauge that from, let's say, funding rates. We gauge them from altcoins, how they've been performing. And the only things that have been performing are meme coins. So I'm wondering who these people are. I don't think they are particularly retail. I don't think it's the people who see those television ads and they're thinking, I want to do this, as they did last time. So when last time Bitcoin at its high in April, May, we saw that retail action. I mean, I remember every day we would see like 20% pumps on various coins, not even just one, like a lot of them. And then you saw people trading Doge on you know, non-native crypto exchanges and everything. So that's kind of like a sign of retail people just jumping in, and I think that has been missing in this rally so far. So you also kind of wonder when they will come in, if they will come in, and what's being done to kind of bring them in, from the perspective of the people who kind of run the markets, in the sense that they have a lot of things at stake. So for example, these sheep people, I would imagine that sheep whales are kind of obviously hoping that retail will come in, and perhaps the price is kind of being kept at these levels to attract those people, because I don't think they're in just yet.
mm. Do you think that that's like taking some of the heat from, out of some wind out of the sails of the rest of the market? I mean, if retail's not really into the meme yet, and if they're not, there's no kind of FOMO into Bitcoin. Yeah, is retail just sitting out for now?
I would imagine there's some effect to it. I don't think it's in isolation, because I was looking at the volumes, and I think 24-hour volumes for SHIB are like 38 billion, and 18 billion, $18 billion, and in comparison, Ethereum's 24-hour volume is 30 billion, and Bitcoin is 42 billion, I think.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a really big number, and it's I think after Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's SHIB which is kind of at this figure in the top 20, or even perhaps after that. So obviously there's a lot of money that's going into it on a 24-hour basis, and definitely that's going to affect how other assets perform, especially when retail is not there.
Yeah, but I think we might use the term retail a bit too broadly, right? Because there's a lot of like, I think the more traditional usage of retail and perhaps more appropriate is sort of like the people who would start buying a Bitcoin ETF that didn't before. So like,
Right.
grandma, with her retirement fund or whatever. But also, I think there's a very clear, and I think we've all experienced this in our own lives, and I think probably a lot of people listening to this podcast have experienced it. There's also a section of like retail, I think, that we tend to use the term for, which is people who don't actually know about cryptocurrency, it's like how they work and stuff like that, but they just want to make money off of them without any consideration whatsoever. Now we saw this earlier in the year, of course, with BSC, the BSC casino, let's say. Um, and I think that was, and I use that example because that was sort of the first kind of like quote unquote Ethereum clone where they just started cloning a bunch of stuff, and then people could like, I remember there was a YouTube video going around of like how you can make your own like token on BSC in like 5 minutes, and we saw a lot of just rugs, like straight rug pulls. We've seen this on other layers as well, but there's certainly like an audience of people that want to just like buy into this stuff without knowing what it is. And like I don't know if it's for like the to satisfy like sort of a gambling urge. I think that's a large part of it. We also saw a lot of it on TikTok earlier in the year, where there were a lot of like TikTok influencers shilling like Safe Moon and a bunch of this other stuff, and it worked. So, and I've had a lot of people again who have written me, who don't speak to me normally, like asking me about like sheep and this stuff. So I think there is a certain section of retail that is buying this stuff, um, which is again that worries me a bit because when we saw this happening earlier in the year before, that's when we had a huge. Do you remember we had a huge shakeout? I'm gonna pull up the chart real quick and look when it was. So yeah, this was like around like May, right? We hit we hit the previous all-time high in April for the all-time high for Bitcoin, right? And things were like really overheated, and then we had a big shakeout of over leveraged people, and I do
Yeah.
feel like we are in a similar situation now, especially the more that these meme coins continue to outperform even on a down day. That makes me worried that it's like, for lack of a better summary, that these people have to lose money because markets don't work efficiently where it's just everyone makes money. That's not how it works. It's like 80% or something. Like the majority of people lose money, and you would have to think that sooner rather than later, the majority of people that are buying these dog themed meme coins are going to get left holding the bag and they're going to lose money. And to Hunain's point as well, it makes me wonder kind of who is bidding this up, who is keeping this up, because I don't believe that just like my random acquaintances from back home are like bidding the price up. I don't believe that for a second. I think they're buying it, but I don't think they're the ones responsible for keeping the price going up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty clear difference also with like when Axie Infinity. I mean, it's still performing relatively well, but like, as it was really the standout in the markets, as the rest of the market would fall. Like Axie Infinity was just, still mooning, going parabolic, and but that at least maybe was able to be traced back to like its spread in I think it was Southeast Asia. I think the Philippines, especially, like actually using the play to earn dynamics and like mechanics of that game to make money. So there was like there was some kind of like real thing behind it. But you're right. The I don't know, the power of this meme doesn't seem strong enough to justify. I'm just looking at the chart now, and right now for the day is like up 30% for the day for Sheeb. It's just
Yeah. The other thing I want to bring up too that I really don't like about it that gives me cause for concern is that with something like Axie Infinity, right, there is a game behind it, right? And this game's in development. They have fundraisers. The company that develops the game has fundraisers. And I mean, there is, whether you think the game is good or not, there is something behind it. And there's play to earn mechanisms and all that stuff. Now with these dog name meme coins, like when Hunain, you brought up the point of like how are they bringing people in? And I think the answer is very clear, is they are just, I think, cheaply just memeing this stuff, like to the point that I'm surprised that even, I mean, Twitter's always been notorious for years upon years in cryptocurrency for spam, for crypto spam, right? There was always like all of the fake accounts. There were a million fake Vitalics. There was a fake everybody. Anybody who's everybody, there was a fake account for them that was just spamming replies and all this stuff. Now what I see on a daily basis is just spam, like obvious bot accounts, just spamming the next meme coin. And every day it's something else. Every day it's some other dog or a baby version of that dog, and just spamming it and spamming it and spamming it and spamming it. And the most low quality like memes and stuff you can even imagine. They're just so bad. And that really, I mean, that like bothers me. One, because they blow up my notifications all the time and I have to like mute threads and stuff. But like that that's just bad. I mean, that's a bad sign. You don't see, you have like, bag holder communities and other altcoins and stuff. We all know about those. But like a lot of those people aren't bots. They're just people left holding the bag that have an emotional attachment to it and they want to see the price eventually go back up to where it was when they bought or whatever. But like what you see with these dog theme meme coins is just bots, absolute bots. And that's just bad. There's no way to spin that other than that's bad. I mean, there has to be some malicious intent in that because somebody's paying for those bots. And the only reason they're doing that is because they want more people to buy it in like the typical kind of Ponzi fashion. And it's just extremely easy to just buy a bunch of bots to spam any post that you target with just 100 things about whatever your dog coin of choice is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with
So,
that.
think I should sell my sheep? Not financial advice.
At some point.
I don't know. I mean, I probably would, me personally, but that's, I mean, again, people who like follow me or something know, like, I do generally try to sell things when I feel like they've reached this kind of manic phase. Those who follow me know I sold like my Ohm for Olympus DAO at pretty much the top, and then I did recently buy back in, not at like the very bottom or something, but I did buy back in when I felt like it sort of had a shake out and it's getting some strength or something. In the case if I had any sheep or something like that, which I don't, I probably would be looking to get out and realize gains like now because it's just for everything I've said here, it's just to the point that it's like a fever pitch. And of course, it can always go higher. These things, it's incredibly difficult to try to call a top on something like this. But when it's like, if you tried to call a top on Axie Infinity, you would have probably gotten wrecked, many times in the past. But again, like this stuff is just it's too much noise. I mean, we're talking about it now as pretty much the main topic on this podcast, right? It's like it's so loud, and when things get that loud is when I try to like realize gains. Not
Yeah.
financial advice to anybody. I'm only speaking for myself.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. And I just wanted to bring up that point about Twitter and there being a lot of spam around these coins. I was just wondering that all these tools that use social media kind of trends as sentiment indicators, are they affected by these bots or can they filter them out effectively? I'm not sure. But I would imagine that when you take a quick look at these hashtags and cash tags trending, obviously the bots will skew these figures to a significant figure. I mean, significantly impact these figures, definitely, because these bots just outnumber everybody. I would even say that even the actual community members of these coins probably don't tweet as much as these bots do, which is obviously the intent and purpose of it. But I'm just thinking, do these sentiment analysis tools have some kind of filtering for these things, or do you guys know how that would work?
I don't know. It would be a good. I mean, if somebody listening to this podcast knows, it'd be good. Write in, let us know. I don't know. If I was gonna venture a guess, I would guess that they don't do a particularly good job of like filtering this stuff out, just because of the fact that these things even kind of exist in the first place and are kind of hard to like get out of your feed unless you manually like curate it. So unless these sentiment analysis tools, I would imagine someone has to be manually like keeping up
Yeah,
with
yeah,
this stuff, and I
true.
think it's kind of hard to keep up with it.
I agree. I would imagine that this they do game the system then in this manner and kind of get certain coins to show up as positive sentiments, whatever around them.
Well, the whole point is to game the system, isn't it? I mean, really,
Yeah,
and that's the malicious aspect of it. Because again, using the comparison of let's say like Ohm, Olympus DAO's token, they are, they believe in memeing, and I encourage anyone to read our latest in depth by Rick about Olympus DAO. But they meme and they believe in memeing and stuff, and it's like in a way that is, I would argue, tends to be more clever, tends to be funnier, fit in more with kind of like the cryptocurrency community at large,
Mhm.
this sort of thing. They don't bot spam. Bot spam is nonsense. It's just garbage. It's pure noise. Like I've never seen any kind of just spam or noise from like Olympus DAO. They might do like joke memes with like Pepe the Frog and stuff like that, but it's like not just bot spam with like a picture of Elon holding a Shiba Inu or something like for the 1 millionth time.
True, true.
Yeah. I wonder. I mean, has the NFT verification feature been rolled out on Twitter? Do you hear about this yet?
I don't think it's rolled out yet. No, I think it's still in the like their beta phase.
Mm. I wonder if, like, which is one way to potentially fight against all these bots is like if you use this like currency, uh, I don't know, it's not a hashtag, but like the cash tag or whatever you call it. Um, but yeah, like to only have that if you not have like a verified account or verified NFT or something, but like, yeah, you'd think that Twitter would start thinking about how to clean that up a bit.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me. I was going over my feed earlier today, and something I just glanced upon something, and it said that Photoshop is going to have a feature where NFTs can be verified, and I thought that was
Hmm.
pretty cool. I just checked it again, and it's a news on various reputable media sites. So apparently it's true, and I think it's a big step because Photoshop is actually, obviously the tool of choice for a lot of artists and artists who want to kind of create NFTs and have those that verification mechanism baked into it. Would be a big step towards kind of legitimizing, this digital art as something that has value beyond, what typically people attribute to it.
Yeah, and just for like uh, you know, like actually, this kind of goes back to Adam. You mentioned a topic about the Associated Press trying to put like their work on uh, independent journalism on the blockchain, and I saw that the New York Times in 2019 had actually started a project also uh, for giving credit and citing the uh, photographers of and sourcing their the material that they use. So I think with these and with just blockchain in general, it's interesting to see how that immutability will be kind of going into different industries and spheres that you wouldn't necessarily think, like NFT artists using Photoshop or a journalist, recording a video and having that all be the metadata be verified. But what do you guys think? Like, is that kind of back to the 2017 TED Talk pipe dream of how crypto will save the world?
Kind of. I think that every time one of these things happens, I think the Bitcoin SV people like cry another tear that it's not using BSV, because BSV, is sort of the whole things it's supposed to be, like the database, the immutable database powered by Bitcoin. And unfortunately, none of these people seem to use BSV. But I do think, jokes aside, I do think that I mean, I think it's valuable. I think that, like, putting everything on the blockchain, like the whole 2017 thing. I mean, I think there was a lot of merit to a lot of that, because it just it's very nuanced, right? Because blockchains, in many respects, are essentially databases, right? And in a lot of cases, they're sort of less efficient databases than centralized databases that already exist. But having something that is like sort of legitimate importance be immutable, um, I think there's certainly value to that. I mean, I don't know how much stock I put into it necessarily of how incredibly important it might be, but I think with the case of the AP, right, is they're using Chainlink as an oracle to allow other people to source the AP's information, like independently, right? and have it be verified and all that stuff. So I think that is an interesting use case, and it's useful. That's a step. Using an Oracle like Chainlink is a step beyond just like I'm putting my byline on the blockchain. You know what I mean?
Today's weather, yeah.
People will know. People will always know that I wrote this.
And then it was raining on Wednesday.
Yeah. With that
also,
that is Bitcoin SV's big claim to fame, is having the weather on it.
Those big block sizes, just
man.
all that weather data.
No, that makes me wonder. I mean, I think a legitimate kind of discussion can be around the fact that whether blockchain can kind of solve the fake news problem that seems to be growing bigger and bigger, and is obviously destined to be bigger with time. How, like Adam said, so if you put your byline, or in consequently, obviously your story is also on the blockchain, and they become immutable, and they can be verified by timestamps and everything. I would imagine it becomes easier to kind of track the source of information, or the first source of information, and then the person, even if it's a malicious, let's say, story, they can't really go back and change it. So they can't go back and delete that page or change the content on it. How valuable is that to preserving, the integrity of news? I think there is some merit to that. I think it's something that should be explored.
Yeah, no, I think that would also be incumbent upon, like the major platforms, Facebook, Twitter, maybe Google, in general, news itself, but especially where you're sharing, the social networks, because that could be helpful in, fighting against fake news, but it would still take people trusting this thing, blockchain, that apparently that video is legitimately what that video was, and not a deep fake. But if as doctored photos and deep fakes, probably we already see them now, but I think there's potentially a bigger threat in the future even, and especially in less free societies where media is more restrictive, but I think it would be incumbent upon the platforms to institute some kind of verification process.
Yeah, and I think this is where it gets tricky, though, because it's like if you decentralize information verification, let's say, or that would be the goal, right? So someone wrote a piece of fake news, and then that's immutable on the blockchain, and you can see this was fake, this person lied, so their sort of their credibility now is called into question, that sort of thing. But that still relies in a large part on sort of centralized verification and curation. And I mean, we've already seen on a lot of social media platforms, and something a lot of people take issue with is that the social media platforms have a lot of power in what they selectively censor, let's say, or what they, not to get deep into political stuff, but let's say I think using vaccine information is probably the biggest one. And, people on one side and people on the other side, a lot of people take issue with disclaimers that get put up, or the independent fact checkers on Facebook and all of that stuff. And I don't know necessarily how blockchain technology would make this, let's say, more viable or more trustworthy, because it still ultimately depends on somebody saying that it's true or not, or the information within is questionable or well sourced or something.
Yeah. I know it's kind of vague. I mean, but I would imagine, let's say, because Max is a copy editor, we're also editors. Imagine there being a pool where we could all sign up, and we'd have to stake obviously some coins so that we have a stake in the system. Let's say we stake those coins for a chance to verify these blocks with news in them, and then obviously if we do a bad job of it, let's say, and that obviously, how do you kind of say that this was a bad job of it is a different discussion. We can probably do a community kind of a voting thing on it, or a 3-strike mechanism or something like that. And then if you do that, your stake gets slashed like it does in POS systems. And then I would imagine that if you set a significant enough stake, and let's say there's a community voting thing as well in place, and both of them combine to shortlist the candidates for such a verification process, and obviously the candidates also kind of get block rewards, let's say, from verifying these news stories, so it's incentivized as well. It's essentially what editors and copy editors do in a regular job, but on a decentralized way. So they still get to make money, and they're still answerable to the community. So if a piece of news comes out as fake, the proofreaders, the copy editors, the editors who are involved in the publication or kind of like verifying that news story would get their stake slashed to a certain degree, or let's say a 3-strike mechanism, or the community can vote on whether it was an honest mistake or whether there was, like a malicious agenda to it, whether they're just being, lazy or whatever. And I feel like it would be a really interesting dynamic. I think it should be interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's two potential ways that this, somehow media and blockchain being integrated. There's on one hand, kind of like using cryptocurrency and blockchain as a funding model, as a business model, even for like independent media, but your share in this, and you can help verify and all this. Like there could be a DAO type system to do that. I guess I would think that it would take you'd still have to find a reason to trust that. I don't know these other fact checkers. How would I know that they're actually sourcing and clicking the links and reading, and if it's translated from a language that I don't know, am I going to go and learn the grammar so that I can choose one word because it's a present continuous, not present simple? There's different degrees of veracity, and so I think that trying to make a community centralized capital T truth is it kind of sounds like a 2017 TED Talk to me. But I think, on the other hand, the more technology side, and just using blockchain, as even if it were a centralized thing, if the New York Times was doing this, but or the AP had their own nodes or whatever, however they want to do it. But when you, for example, record video or when you take a photo, the metadata that's captured at that moment, can give you the clue of okay, where you're at. If you then edit that video later, that would be seen, so that in that way the evidence at least is pure. And then if someone posts that video on Facebook, there could just be a little pop-up that says this video has been edited. Not necessarily saying oh, it's a deep fake or it's this, but it's kind of, you want that blue check mark saying this is the original source material. And I think blockchain could play a role in that.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, because I mean, the whole goal of all of this, right, is you want to remove trust from the equation. The whole point is don't trust, verify. Yeah. And I think when we're talking about the written words, for example, so an event happens and people report on it, and it's very, very difficult to just report the facts, right? Because I mean, you could get deep into the philosophy of what is the truth, right, and all this stuff, but when it comes to source material, using your example as footage of a video, and this is the raw video, this is the original video, and this is verified immutably, so we can easily show when it's been edited or something like that. That is, yeah, I just think that's a great example. Coming to to reporting in words, that's where I think it gets really tricky, because it's how can you decentralize reporting? Because reporting happens on an individual level, a reporter reports something. So there's always going to be the the Wire, right? When you have the reporter who starts to fabricate his stories and whatnot.
This is the best TV show, HBO series, by the way, The Wire.
Absolutely.
In case someone lost it. The reporter, absolutely. Though, what is?
Yeah, because the reporter, he at the Baltimore Sun, he fabricates stories and whatnot, and it's unless you're there, it's very difficult to know whether that person is lying or not. And of course, it's the copy editor's job to always try to suss that out, But yeah.
But there's even examples I don't remember his name, but he has some kind of blogger, but he went back and changed his post from December 2019 to like make it sound like he was, all up on COVID and warning people, but he like made all those changes like retroactively. And that's it took a lot of work and a lot of people to find that out and do the fact checking, which is not an easy job. I mean, that's a job in and of itself, just to be a fact checker. But yeah, that is the trust inherent, is that their words. And yeah, not to get too philosophical, but like your choice of word in this way, or using this synonym with a slightly different nuance. I mean, it's was the attack, was it an attack, was it an accident, was it an incident, was it violent, was it this, was it that, like the words that you use just to portray that information, convey that information, already kind of loses that capital T truth. So I think it's probably most effective for the digital evidence that we have for like the metadata on a video, or the the when an article is posted, that it could be not saying that the information inside is correct and verified, but like that it is still its original form, or yeah, I think things like that are ways that blockchain could help facilitate more trust.
Yeah. And like issuing corrections and stuff. I think it could be used in a way for reputation building, and let's say like sort of like a reputation score type situation where you you can have an individual author, for example, is kind of like record, like a record of corrections. How and then you can see like how severe are those corrections or how minor are those corrections. In what cases were things like lies? Like you could have a database, an immutable database of a reporter's work.
Mm-hmm.
And then that allows you as the individual to sort of scale your level of trust towards that individual or towards this publication or this blog or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the AP is like, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the AP just in general, especially their style, but just in general also. Uh, but it's cool that they've been you know embracing blockchain, and not just I think they've put their election calls from the 2020 election. That was like the way the AP, for international listeners who don't necessarily know how the voting election system works in the U.S. There's like these small little precincts that people go and vote at, and then there's an AP reporter there that talks to the official, and then when they count everything, their job. One of my friends did this a couple of years ago, but his job was essentially just to like hear the number from the election officials and then type it into the AP like wire system, and that I think is another case where blockchain can be important too, because when you're putting that initial data in, yeah, there might be other votes found, other votes thrown out for one reason or another, but having that initial guy on the ground talking to the election officials, here's the number, save, and then at least there's that record.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
What would you guys put on the blockchain?
Uh,
I don't know. I mean, I often think, and I was going to say this, but I didn't want to prolong the discussion too much. But I was going to say that, I think a lot of times we overestimate the impact of, I mean, we overestimate the adoption rate of blockchain. I mean, it sounds good, but it's very difficult to kind of adopt it properly. And that's because, let's call them legacy technologies, but they are, well entrenched, and it's really hard to get rid of them. For example, even from, like, do you remember in 2017 there was talk of, like these decentralized file storage systems, decentralized CDNs, decentralized everything,
Mhm.
and it's still not happening. And I don't see it happening even in the next 10 years. I personally don't see it happening in the next 10 years. I mean, we're still going to be using iPhones, we're still going to be using all of these things that are so well entrenched. And we are kind of signed up into a lot of these centralized closed loop ecosystems, and I don't see that changing just for the sake of an experimental protocol that promises theoretic freedom or decentralization that is not even audited properly and can be hacked, can be compromised. I would rather just stick with something that is familiar to me. And I'm not sure, obviously I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like, this is kind of like a general thing as well. All of these blockchain based products and services have to be not, this just can't get away just because they're decentralized. They have to be better than a lot of the options that are there. You can't expect people to compromise on the quality of services just because something is, let's say, decentralized, or kind of removes the need for trust. You can't do that in everything, and you can't do that in majority of the things. You maybe will do that in a very minor, small category of things, but you can't do that across everything.
Yeah, Wikipedia comes to mind in like
Yeah, yeah.
in your example, like where I think uh, some parts of our lives, or like some industries, are just uh, more inherently like decent, and people would trust, or would want decentralization in like you know a Wikipedia storage of information. But when it comes to your iPhone, or um, your Apple Music, or your Google Play, uh, I don't know what is on Google Play actually, but whatever it is, those are ecosystems that you just don't, you don't need a type model or a blockchain type model.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is a blockchain Wikipedia called Everpedia, which is built on EOS, and I've never used it. And I think one of the issues with the kind of like put everything on the blockchain, decentralize everything that we saw in like 2017 was that everyone at that time wanted to do it with their own blockchain, so with their own layer one. And a lot of this, I mean, let's be real, was just to make money. And I think a lot of these things are essentially hamstrung ultimately by tokenomics, because a lot of times you don't need a token for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what I sort of think is like when it comes to using like getting like a decentralized Wikipedia, or just the idea of decentralizing everything, or having like a viable decentralized social media platform with like like token incentives or something. I think that this is more likely to come to fruition when Ethereum actually scales, because I think that a lot of this stuff could be built on Ethereum. Like I think that Ethereum would be kind of like the winner when it just comes to being the blockchain that you build decentralized things on. I mean, decentralized finance was built on Ethereum, NFTs were built on Ethereum, and then these sprawl out to other blockchains like Solana, for example. But I do think that once if Ethereum is actually cheap to use, like on a transaction by transaction basis, then I think you could start rapidly building more of these things that work and are real. I mean, right now, like using like a game as an example, you can't really have like a video game on Ethereum when gas fees are so high, because it's like every time you like earn some micro amount of ether or something for doing an action in a game, the transaction fee is like absurd, so it doesn't work. But if Ethereum scales to the point where transactions are, let's say, like virtually free, very, very, very cheap, then that's where I could see having a decentralized Wikipedia, having a decentralized with token incentives. So people are, because that's the key, right? To have these things work, I really believe you do have to properly incentivize the people to manage them, to work. Like it takes work to run Wikipedia. So to have a decentralized Wikipedia, it takes work to run that, and people need to be rewarded, and they would get rewarded in ETH or some other ERC20 token that they think has value. Um, of course, it'd be the Bitcoin maxis would say like, "Oh, this stuff can be built on Bitcoin," but it's like, well, no, it can't. Maybe Bitcoin SV with its massive blocks or whatever, but it's not. On the real Bitcoin, it's not going to happen.
I'm just
And right now, on
imagining.
Ethereum, it's not going to happen either until Ethereum scales.
Yeah, I'm just imagining one day like playing Mortal Kombat on Ethereum, and like every button I press is like a transaction, and it being so cheap that I can just play normal like button mashing, and just collect rewards for I don't know special moves.
Well, I think you get rewards
Dream
if
of
you
that
win.
day.
If you win
Yeah,
the
probably.
fight.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I'm terrible at Mortal Kombat actually.
But wouldn't that be awesome though?
Yeah, it would
Man, that'd
be.
be awesome. Any competitive video game that incentivizes you, that you receive Ethereum for if you like win, that'd be awesome. Um, but I mean, using like social, like I use Twitter, but I don't use other social media. Like I don't use like Facebook and all that stuff. Like I hate it. Like I absolutely hate it. I used to use it back when Facebook was like only for you had to have a college email address and all that stuff. I used it back then, but like now I see no value in this stuff whatsoever. And I'm not like actively searching for some decentralized social like alternative to try to get all my friends to join or whatever. But like uh, using but if in the future we can have like let's say an Ethereum based, it would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, Ethereum 2.0. When's that coming?
All right, so thank you for joining us on Send It by OKX Insights. Make sure to subscribe on your podcast service of choice. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And we will be back not next week, but the week after. So until then, send it.